What's up, guys? Today we're going to be doing a bit of a review on the Hyper E-Ride Mountain mid-drive. I've had this bike for a little bit, probably ridden it like 60 miles, something like that. Not as much as I had my other bikes, but just wanted to give a quick review of it because I took it out on the trail the other day and still have that stuff fresh on my mind, so I want to make sure that I cover it all before it gets away from me. So first off, we'll start with the price of the bike. I bought the bike for $699. Obviously, I have other bikes over here. I have a Giant e-bike, a Giant dual suspension mountain bike. I got a couple of hyper bikes over here, and then I've got an older Giant 26-inch behind this. This is again the E-Ride mid-drive mountain, 36 volt, 250 watt motor from Walmart. I would say first things first. If you're just looking for a bike to ride around your neighborhood and mild cross country trails, this bike will definitely do it. Trail that I hit up to ride this on Sunday, which was about 3 days ago, was a little more aggressive than what I would say most riders are going to start on. I wouldn't say that this bike didn't handle it. It did, but there were some downfalls. For instance, the shifting, it's not extremely crisp. It's a twist shifter or a grip shifter. And while I would say it wasn't bad, it did its job. It's only got 70 gears, and most current bike or most newer bikes have uh, for adults has somewhere around 10 or 12. And so the range on this cassette is pretty limited. As a result of that, the majority of the time when I was riding around the trail, I ended up having to put it in level one assist and then just cycle through these gears as I could. But I definitely would say on my giant e-bike, electric mountain bike, I find myself riding it often without even having to use the assistance. I know it seems counterintuitive, but I don't always need it. So sometimes I just ride the bike with it off. This bike, I didn't find myself doing that. I just left the assistance on the entire time. That might have been because the Giant's engagement with the assist is much more noticeable than this one. Maybe level one on the Giant is much more powerful than this one, and that's probably why I use this one because it seemed as if I was just riding, at my normal pace as far as output goes. Um, I would say that the front suspension is adequate for cross country riding as long as you're not putting it through extreme bumps and expecting it to recover quickly. It will do its job. It will absorb everything, but the spike's kind of heavy for that front fork. And so because of that, you will find yourself bottoming out the suspension and it won't be recovering as quickly as you might want it to in extreme cases. Keep in mind, there was only one section of the trail where I got to a point where I really was dealing with that. And the bike handled okay. The only issue that I had the whole time riding the trail, as far as failures go, is there's a little device right here that holds the chain on, and this is supposed to keep it on this main cog, and it actually came off while I was going down that chunky downhill that was fully exercising the forks. Um, I did take it off of a couple of drops, and I'm just noticing I got a broken seal right here on this shock. I don't love that. It's definitely going to allow some mud to get in there, but I've seen a lot of folks that are replacing the shock and putting in uh, what is it? Does not move. That's the nickname for it. D&M. I think it's what comes on Ceramics and stuff like that. It's not a well-known shop, but it's a cheapie. It might be better than this. It's probably what I'll end up putting on it. Um, I spent $6.99 on this bike. if you know anything about bikes, you could very easily spend $6.99 on a fork alone for a mountain bike, let alone an electric mountain bike, and getting Fox components is just extremely expensive. So that being said, I understand why the components aren't as good as they are, and you should probably take that with a grain of salt as well, because the overall bike handles well. It does what it's marketed to do, um, but it's just not some extreme, high level mountain bike that you're going to be able to go and just own the trails on. And what I would say this bike is more of is if you're looking to get into e-biking, or if you're looking to get into mountain biking in general and you're kind of out of shape, this is a great bike. I would say at $6.99, it's an absolute steal because it's a mid-drive. There are a lot of bikes that you can get for $6.99 that have a hub drive, but I wouldn't recommend them for riding on a mountain bike trail just because of the engagement and the lack of torque and things of that nature. This motor is butter smooth, and I would dare to say it's smoother and quieter than my giant mountain bike, which is like 5 times more expensive. Um, Now the engagement, I would say maybe on the giant it's a little bit better, but I mean, it's so close that I wouldn't call one crazy better than the other as far as engagement goes. And I mean, like I said, that bike is 5 times more expensive. Granted, the majority of that cost is in the suspension, which you can definitely tell. While you're riding this bike, if you took that giant out and you took this bike out and you took it on some techie downhill or even techie uphill, you would definitely be able to tell the difference in these two suspensions. It doesn't rattle a lot, but you can hear it. Things kind of just moving around and whatnot. I wouldn't say it's concerning, but definitely, you know, what you would expect from a budget bike. Something that it's not, those are not things that you would expect from a more expensive bike. The front fork does lock out. I've used that when I was riding trails around my house, or excuse me, the paved trail around my house. Seems to work. Whenever I did go on the trail, I did try for a bit to open it all the way up, run it full open, and I just felt it was going too far down into the action of the fork, so I ended up running it halfway open. And there is a preload on the other side. I think it's got like 14 clicks, and I've got it running at 7. And the shock, I think it's got 6 clicks or maybe 8 clicks, and I run it like 5. That's when I ran it on the trail. I might make some adjustments later, but that's what I've done so far. Um, let's see what else. One thing to know about this bike is that this bolt right here for moving the seat around, it's super duper tight. I would definitely recommend going and getting like an Allen key socket, putting it on a larger wrench and backing that off before you try to attempt it with a regular Allen wrench. The computer works well. It's easy to see. No issues there. The fitting of the bike, I would say it's between a medium and a large. I was able to move the seat up and move it back enough to where it felt comfortable for me, and I rolled the bars a little bit more forward. And I did move that computer in a little bit. Whenever you get it, it's going to be closer to your hand, and it's very hard to reach your thumb up and be able to push those buttons. But if you back it off just maybe an inch or two, it's easier to reach up there and be able to adjust that as you're going on the fly. The Tektro brakes, they are cable brakes. For this weight of bike, I would say typically you'd want hydraulic brakes. You get a lot more stopping power out of it. But they did slow me down. They did their job. I wouldn't say that they are high performance, but they're adequate. And so if I were to change something on this bike in order to make it a better trail bike, I would say front fork, shock, brakes. And I think that's it. I might put a dropper on it. If you could put a dropper on this, it is a little bit of an issue because this seat doesn't go down too far. it ends up running into this bolt right here. So if you wanted to cut it down, if you're a shorter rider, you may end up having to cut the seat post down. I did have to manually put the seat up and down whenever I was moving around, riding and trying to do different obstacles. I'll try to maybe include some obstacles at the end of this video, some stuff that I did on it. I did take it off some drops. Actually, there was a surprise drop when we initially started the trail that I'd forgotten was there, and it was probably, I don't know, like a foot drop. And I came off of it, and I was pleasantly surprised that the suspension held up. It didn't get wonky. Um, I was able to control the bike and with no issue. And then I ended up taking it off a little higher drop later on. Maybe I'll like again, like I said, I might include that video here if I can get it uploaded. And it did definitely use all of the travel in the front fork. I wouldn't say that I felt uncomfortable, but someone who isn't experienced or someone who's used to a more advanced bike may have a little bit of an issue with that because it doesn't recover and it doesn't settle as quickly as another, more expensive bikes. Let's see what else. Sorry, I'm going to check my notes here so I don't miss anything. Grip shifting. So it's not a problem. It works. It shifts well. Other than the 7-speed, gearbox or drivetrain, it ends up, it shifted well. The only problem that I had was whenever I was climbing stuff, I would sometimes inadvertently shift, and it was a little problematic because I'm used to getting up on the bike and being able to kind of um, stand up on the pedals, and that as a result of that, I would find myself gripping the handlebar, and then I would accidentally, as I did this, I would shift, and that became a little bit of a problem for me, but it wasn't overwhelmingly difficult to deal with. The battery life was excellent. I rode 8 miles on this trail. It was definitely some significant climbing. I wouldn't say it's extreme. It's not like Colorado or anything like that. I'm here in Texas, so it's some cross country climbing and nothing you couldn't do on a normal bike pretty easily. But it did it well. I would say you're probably going to leave the assistance on in all those climbs, and as long as you get to the main, or the tallest cog, you'll probably be okay to cruise right up hills. It's not effortless, not like my Giant. I can get my Giant to the point to where it just kind of is effortless to climb. This bike, you still have to put in a little bit of work because of the gearing. You can't overcome those significant climbs. I will say you're not going to ride this bike without the assistance, or I wouldn't recommend it. Now with the added weight, it is an e-bike. It is a little heavier, but I would say that there was no point in time where the assistance didn't make up for the weight as far as climbing, going down, flat out, stuff like that. It worked quite well. Traction, the tires, they're Kenda tires, but they're not great. I would say if you're going to do anything to this bike, post we've already talked about, tires would be very helpful if you're going to go on trails that aren't cross country trails where it's mostly dirt. The trail that I went on had a lot of wet rocks, and these tires definitely did not have any traction. A little bit of mud, and it just, I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't falling all over the place or anything like that, but they definitely weren't confidence inspiring. That being said, there were other bikes out there with higher end tires and higher end bikes and higher end suspension, and they were still doing some stuff. They were sliding around everywhere as well. So it might have just been chalked up to a bit of the trail conditions. I did, whenever I initially started riding this bike, I did find that it was kind of in inconsistent about its shifting, I ended up just adjusting the barrel, and I was able to get it to where it shifts pretty cleanly throughout the gear set. But I did have problems with that in the beginning, right out of the box. Thing I did, if you watched, if I do put in these other videos, and I am talking about doing these drops, and possibly, that might make you feel like you can do jumps or something like that. I would say this bike can handle small drops. It probably can handle small jumps, but it definitely already has a sticker on it that says don't go over any jumps. It's not made for jumps. While that might be a little bit of protection on their own side, of Walmart's side, it definitely is a situation where this bike it looks like it's capable of bombing down a downhill, but it's not. It's definitely not capable of doing that. If you really wanted to do it and you just wanted to see what it was like, you could probably make one or two runs and it would be okay. But as far as that being a normal thing, this suspension, these components on this bike are not going to hold up to um, that kind of use. I wouldn't say it's abuse, but that kind of riding style. I would not say. I would say who this bike's for. I'd say it's for anyone trying to get in like cross country level riding. Maybe you're just breaking into riding and you're thinking about buying, a higher end bike, but you don't really want to spend the money. Whether it be a regular bicycle or a electric bicycle, I would say if you can get it for the $6.99, buy it, ride it, upgrade sparingly, and then once you get to the point of something breaking or something costing you a lot of money to upgrade, consider just using it as an extra bike and then spending the money to get a much nicer bike. So I'd say take a year, take 2 years and ride this bike and then go get yourself a much nicer electric bike or regular mountain bike and consider yourself in pretty good standing as far as outgoing cost and use of the bike. Uh, yeah, so my current sentiment is that for the money, this bike's great. Um, there's not a whole lot you can expect from a mid-drive mountain full suspension mountain bike for $699. And I would say this bike definitely ticked all the boxes that I needed it to. I will be keeping it around long term to see how it holds up over time. Uh, Currently, the majority of the trails around me are closed because there's not been a whole lot of rain. But whenever that rain lets up, I plan to get out there and ride this a bit more on a larger variation of trails. I can report back on that if you guys want. Um, if there's other information that you guys want me to figure out, or you want me to test something on the bike, just comment below. If there's some kind of situation where you want to know what fork travel is or something like that, just comment below. I'll try to answer as best I can. Like I said, I do plan to do some ride videos. I will try to put a little bit of content of me riding it this last weekend into this video. If I don't, then I'll try to edit it in later and repost. Other than that, I would say if you found this video helpful, actually one more thing. This bike, the cranks, maybe it's just a bike that I have, it does have a little bit of a creak. It's not terrible, but I've had other bikes with this, like this, and it's typically something that has to do with the crank not being installed with the greatest longevity in mind. They're probably just installing this and not putting any kind of grease or any kind of stuff like that, being a little careless about building the bikes. And you can tell that whenever you put the bike together, that there are some things that are loose. If you're going to ride this bike and you're going to go on serious trails, you need to tighten everything up. Do a function check on everything before you ride this on any kind of trails. But yeah, that's the only real problem I've had. Other than the pedals, you definitely want to get more grippy pedals. That's a typical thing. Almost everybody does that. You may even have some laying around. I think I do. That's probably what I'll end up doing, but I wanted to test it with the pedals that come with it for a while, just to give you guys a real understanding of how the bike is in stock form. But yeah, so other than that, if you guys found this video helpful, leave a like. If you want to see more content related to this bike or other electric bikes, Hyper or Giant or whatever, I'm going to try to post some more content up related to the electric bikes that I have, and maybe grab some more and do some quick reviews on those as well. Then subscribe. And if you want to see any other content, leave a comment below. Or if you have a question, leave a comment. I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for your time.